It is time for game 2 between Duckload, White.Ra, and LonerPrime, and we are on Terminus, the four-leaf clover map of StarCraft 2. 4 distinct areas also serving as spawning locations, and we've got some interesting ones here for this matchup as we see Loner spawning in the south position as the blue Terran, and his opponent, Duckload.Ra or White.Ra, spawning as the red Protoss in the east position.
Now, I don't think in last game we got to see White.Ra's full potential as a Protoss player. I think the main downfall of that first game was that early attack he did. It completely backfired. Force fields were not giving him anything to work with at all, and so we did not get to see late game White.Ra's, PvT, which he is very good at. And so if we are going to see a late game at all in this matchup, it will be on this map. Terminus is a giant map, and I just want to point out, for those of you who don't know, on this map, you can actually get 3 bases, and it is just guarded by 1 choke. I do believe that this is the first StarCraft 2 map to utilize a base layout like that, and so a lot of times you will see players take both those expansions off of just a couple of gateways or a couple of barracks, and it quickly transitions it into the mid and late game, just because the economy on this map is huge, which means we could see some aerial harassment from either player to try and punish a player who is going for that fast expand.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and you have to find that key balance in between those because of everything that you mentioned. A lot of these players have to make sure that they're only going one route. Can't spread yourself too thin, and then you've also got to think about, well, if I go that route, can my opponent easily counter me with the unit composition that works? So what makes it interesting here is as soon as White.Ra realizes where his opponent is, this means that suddenly Loner's bases that go to the natural and the third are actually much more exposed than White.Ra's will be, because he's got a shorter fly distance to that third, which is probably not going to be as defended. So as we start up here at the start, we've of course got the orbital coming up, first barracks going down, no quick add-on or anything like that, so he'll just bust out the first Marine. And you can see SCV checking things out, sees the Psi Core, knows the first gateway's coming. We have a Zealot coming as well, sees the 1 gas, and we do see White.Ra with a pylon down below. You'll notice this, a lot of spread of those pylons to make sure, because this is one of those maps you want to have vision up. You do not want a medevac sneaking in here mid to late game and just causing all sorts of chaos inside your base.
Yeah, it's really good you mentioned medevac drops, because this map, while you can get 3 bases easily, that means there is a bajillion yards of surface area that you have to defend. We have seen time and time again players not putting buildings at certain locations of these giant bases, which is exactly actually what White.Ra is doing right away. If you look at White.Ra's base, you can actually see pylons already being placed to give him optimum vision, and if you look at the Terran's base, he hasn't actually put anything in that smoke screen on the left side, and that is something that can play a huge role. I've seen White.Ra do it before, I've seen Koreans do it before, where they will hide stuff inside your own base. Very frustrating to deal with. It's kind of like Metalopolis, where there is a smoke screen, but this one is much larger, much easier to hide things in there, and there will be a lot of creative play like that. Now, we do see White.Ra grabbing the Xel'Naga Tower in the center, even has his first Zealot sending a Stalker to the center of the map as well. We'll see if he's going to try and be aggressive with this. A lot of times you will see Protoss send out their first Zealot and their first Stalker just to kind of size up the defenses of the Terran, because if they have a Marauder, that's going to tell you a lot about what build they're going. If they have a bunker with 4 Marines in it, that also is going to tell you a lot, and so he'll probably just run at least his probe down here to see exactly what's going on, and he at least scouted and saw that there was no extremely early expansion, but we will have to keep an eye on the production tab to see if players do that. But there is actually a starport just finishing up for Loner, and he's getting Hellions here. This tells me we are going to see some sort of Hellion drop.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, and White.Ra actually had a little bit of vision there as he poked up with the probe to see what was going on. But again, he's kind of blind to what's going on in the grand scheme of things, just sees the single barracks. On the other side, at least we see a little bit more info coming out of Loner. However, 2 more gateways thrown down for 3, and then of course we have the Nexus following that. So that gave, of course, White.Ra the option of maybe poking a little bit, but if he needed needed to come back and dropping that expansion, which is exactly what he did. Now, that's also going to give him a lot more time, and when I say him, I mean Loner, to prep and set up this Hellion drop that is inevitably coming out. We could see the medevac. It's on the southern edge of the map, and it's going to make its way all the way around, and I think that's very smart. You know, be overly cautious with these drops. Don't let them get in. What'll be interesting, Husky, is where will he go to drop this, because unless he goes literally right in between those pylons, going to be hard to sneak this medevac in.
I really like how We.LonerPrime has been following this up. The response, he doesn't know exactly what's headed his way, but his response is going to be ideal versus the medevac, because he has been getting out a lot of gateway units, which is exactly what you want versus these Hellions. All three of the Hellions are going to be dropped right here, but guess what? They got dropped on top of Stalkers. Not an ideal situation at all. These Hellions will kill a couple of probes here, but so far not doing the damage they need, and it looks like he's going to intercept the reinforcements there. The medevac could go down if he's not careful. This drop is not... Oh, it is actually getting away and drop at the expansion, but so far, We.LonerPrime has taken very minimal damage, and you have to remember that Loner has invested in a medevac and the Hellions as well. The medevac goes down as well as the Hellions. I really don't think this did enough damage considering how heavily he committed to it.
I do not either. In fact, if I was him, I probably would have just sent that medevac home. He did, I think, 1 probe kill on the second drop, so 3 Hellions dropped. And granted, We.LonerPrime had the very necessary defense set up to handle that. Behind this attack, we are going to see Loner drop down that command center, and his army is pretty small in the grand scheme of things. You know, through that defense, We.LonerPrime added a few more stalkers. He was able to bring his sentries over, so he didn't lose anything but a few probes. And we look at the unit tab right now, it is 33 to 32 with 1 mule out right now, more Marines and Marauders on the way. But I feel like We.LonerPrime really handled that nicely. He's still got some stalkers in the back spread out. No more gateways gone down, but we do have the robotics facility up. So while he gets that going as well, a 3rd base, and he is starting to move forward, possibly this may be his time to push.
We.LonerPrime is really playing this out very well. Not only did he hold that off almost perfectly, he also is following it up with another expansion as well as a little bit of aggression to see exactly what his opponent has. He will scout this with the observer and say, or is he actually going to try to engage here? There's a lot of units here. He may try and snipe the 1 siege tank in the back, and he can kite these Marines around for a little bit, but Loner wisely puts the Marauders inside that bunker, making it nearly impossible to break the defenses at this point. But We.LonerPrime's follow-up to holding that off perfectly. He's not getting excited. He's not trying to push out and win the game right away. He's taking his slight advantage, expanding himself, and he's going to try and further the advantage that he already has. If you do take a look at the 3rd base that We.LonerPrime is grabbing, it does have that rich Vespene Geyser, which will play a huge role as this game continues forward, because Loner just does not have a command center even on the way. He doesn't have his 3rd base anytime soon, and so now that We.LonerPrime has that Colossus tech, he could even add another robotics if he wants, but he is instead going to opt to go ahead and get that extended thermal lance. But again, just looking at the units tab, while both players were at the basically an equal worker count, this is where We.LonerPrime is really going to pull ahead, already at 48 to that 43 workers. So again, I just can't emphasize it enough. We.LonerPrime, his game sense this time is very good, spot on. If you're trying to learn PvT, you just need to watch this game.
Yeah, and you know, the one thing that I'm definitely going to be looking for here, because as I watch this and I see the unit composition here of We.LonerPrime, and you see that we've got the Colossus on the way as well, is exactly what is his plan of attack going to be? Is he looking for like a frontal attack here? Will he maybe harass the 3rd with those Colossus while his gateway units kind of operate as a shield here? And I think one of the things that will determine how it will happen is if we get more siege tanks here from Loner, but they're literally is just the lone siege tank, no pun intended. We are I don't think we're going to get any more, as we have a reactor coming out. Of course, it could go over to that starport as well, but that's something that I'll be looking for here. There's a lot of medevacs here, and that means Loner's going to have the drop opportunities to pull out here soon. But after that last one, We.LonerPrime is going to be ready for them. So I wonder if he's going to use that Colossus to try to harass that 3rd, force those units out, and just kind of eat away at Loner's army.
I do want to mention that this is the time when We.LonerPrime needs to start adding additional buildings, which is exactly what he's doing. He did go ahead and grab a 2nd robotics, as well as, I believe, 3 more gateways on the way. And again, just following it up perfectly, I think it is wise for Loner not to get too many siege tanks, because really the most cost-effective way he can try and play right now is got to be getting Marines, Medevacs, the Vikings as well, and of course the Marauders. So that's exactly what he's doing. He's trying to get the most cost-effective army he can, and even being more cost-effective, gonna grab that Ghost Academy. He will be hoping for some really good EMPs, especially since there's going to be double Colossus being produced. If you look at the production tab, there is 2 Colossus at a time being produced. That means once White.Ra gets 3 or 4 Colossus, it just starts to snowball, and no matter how many Vikings you have, it can be very difficult to deal with. And on top of that, White.Ra is also getting out a Twilight Council. That's going to unlock Blink and, of course, the Charge, and he could even transition into Psystorm just to make his army even that much more effective.
Yeah, and you know, I think the Twilight Council a little late, but it looks like White.Ra decided to go with the double upgrade with the double forge first, and you know, it might just delay that attack. If for example, he's going to get charged, maybe no, he's going to go Blink. But that will inevitably, you know, hold him back just a little bit. I think based off of the Marauder count, Charge will actually be really effective versus our Terran here. And he does have a good amount of Marauders. Just want to make sure that he is going to be able to protect those Colossus. So Blink coming out and more cannons going down. So it looks like White.Ra is going to prep for his 4th base as well, which will make it much, much more difficult. Now, are you surprised at all that we haven't seen Loner trying to go with any sort of drop play at all? It seems that White.Ra is definitely spreading himself out a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, Loner, I think that's one of the only things he's going to be able to do is try and do some drops, but White.Ra does have static, or he doesn't have the static defenses, but he has Stalkers inside of his main base, and it's going to be difficult for that drop to be effective, because really, the only accessible location is White.Ra's main base, and that is one downfall of these spawn locations, but that's just kind of how StarCraft is. Spawn locations dictate what builds you go, and drops, I think you realize, not going to be ideal here. I do want to take a look here at the army size tab. It is 185 to 171. White.Ra has actually had a very sizable lead after that failed harassment in the very early stages of the game, and that just shows you when you are 2 top-tier players, if you mess up just one little thing, it can be a huge thing and just snowball out of control. It does look like Loner is going to move out. He is not maxed, and his upgrades are non-existent. He doesn't have any upgrades at all, while White.Ra has the +1 armor, +1 attack, and is also having his Blink, which he can utilize to take out those Vikings.
Sorry, hold on one second, but we do have a Warp Prism drop in the main base of the Terran, and these 4 Zealots are absolutely wrecking these SCVs, forcing some of the army back. His now main base is no longer mining. It looks like 1 Ghost might get taken out as well, as yes, it does go down, and that one is deemed useless, but what is so important about that is it actually pulled Loner back a little bit, giving White.Ra just a little bit more time. That means that his +2 is going to finish. It means that Charge might get done in the middle of that battle, and so that Warp Prism drop actually ended up being very, very nice there. Although it didn't do like an incredible amount to the economy, it did stop Loner from pushing forward. But my God, look at that Viking count, dude. That is insane.
Yeah, he does have 15 Vikings, which there are, it looks like 7 Colossus on the field. However, White.Ra is warping in more Stalkers to try and deal with that. We do have the Templar Archives on the way as well. Of course, for that Psystorm, you get 1 Psystorm on the grouped of clumped up Vikings, and they will evaporate faster than you can even watch it. But either way, it does look like there's going to be a huge battle in the center of the map. Needs to be careful with the Vikings. EMP going down, but that was only on top of the Stalkers, not hitting anything very important. Oh my God, that is a lot of Marauders. Zealot Charge actually just finishing as well. The +2 attack completely done. And it looks like White.Ra will be okay here. However, can he deal with these Vikings quickly enough, as all of the Colossus have actually been taken out? There is only a single Colossus, the last one getting taken out. Doesn't matter though, this is when he's got to transition into a lot of gateway units and just press his advantage. He could actually take out the 4th base that LonerPrime has on the way. It is not even a planetary fortress yet. Blinking down here to take out the remainder of the medevacs, and he's just going to push into this base. It looks like Loner is going to have a nearly impossible time actually holding this off.
Yeah, in fact, I think this is going to be GG right here. Just too many units. Those Zealots and that Charge upgrade couldn't have come at a better time. And there it is, GG, as White.Ra just knocks Loner down 1 peg, and he will tie it back up 1-1. And yeah, Husky, you know, that was just really, really solid. Everything just like clicked perfectly for White.Ra on that one. His upgrades hit perfectly. That Warp Prism Zealot drop hit perfectly, because had that Terran army gone up there, I think that, I can't say that, Loner would have definitely won it, but that just threw Loner off a little bit, and it allowed White.Ra to let those second tier upgrades finish and just really decimate that army. I mean, those zealots were incredibly effective. And also, Husky, I'm not sure if you noticed, hopefully they caught it on the stream, when the initial army for White.Ra went into attack, White.Ra took like 5 stalkers and moved them forward and almost baited out the EMP. And the lack of units that EMP hit, I think, played a huge part in determining the winner of that battle. And White.Ra only suffered a little bit of shield damage on that one and decisively wrecked everything else with the remainder of his army.
I do think that in that major battle, that Loner, he did split his army very well, but the EMP not hitting any of the main units allowed the Colossus to survive just long enough to soften basically the entire army. Even though it was spread out in the line, there was enough splash damage that his army was able to do that. And then he also just followed it up with mass gateway units. I still have the replay open. He actually was running down there with a lot of zealots as well, just reinforcing that as quickly as he possibly could. And I got to hand to White.Ra, he had basically every upgrade in the book. And if it was any other Protoss, I would be surprised being able to pull off a late game Warp Prism harass like that, but it is White.Ra. He loves his Warp Prisms, and I think that in this game number 3, it is a very high potential that he will continue to do that. He seems to have a lot of success with that, but I'm pretty excited because it is not a 2-0 sweep. It is now tied 1-1, and that means that each player is 1 win or 1 loss away, and you really want to advance at this stage in the tournament, really at any stage of the tournament. So we've seen Loner take 1 game, White.Ra take 1 game, so again, I don't know who's going to win this because we've seen both players try early harassment. It seems like both players did not have success with it, and that ended up dictating who would end up winning the game. So I don't know if we're going to see similar playstyle or if they're going to learn from that and be like, maybe I shouldn't be super aggressive as we move on here to game 3.
Yeah, and game 3 is going to be on Shakura, so anything can happen. A lot of different tricky things on this map, and we'll be back in just a moment to decide who will advance. Will it be Duckload White.Ra, or will it be LonerPrime We? They're up tied 1 game apiece, and when we come back, we'll find out who will advance here for the PokerStrategy.com TSL3.